Hey, what's up, nerds? It's Paul at Radio Free Hammer Hall. Today, we're going to fix chariots in Age of Sigmar. Um, right now, pretty much every chariot in the game is utter trash. They're just not worth playing pretty much ever. So, I thought this was going to be a good opportunity to kind of go through this and see what we might be able to do with these to make them things that are actually playable. So, let's dive in. All right, so first thing to note here is that chariots are not actually like their own unit type. They usually fall under war machines. There's a couple of other things that I would call chariots that like function like that, but aren't like the Achillean Alopex. I think is a good example of that. A lot of these are, about 150 points. I would say there's a decent number of them that are closer to 100. Um, Most of these are pretty fast. Uh, on average, they've got health of 7 or 8, give or take. They've always got some kind of companion that is pulling the chariot, whether it's a horse or some kind of beastie thing in general. Um, this is almost never like a mounted hero, although I think that could be a good opportunity for Games Workshop to explore, like having more hero options on chariots. A lot of these things have multiple builds in the kit, or at least extra heads or different weapons or something for the charioteers. So I think that's a road they could go down. That's something they do with the old world. A lot of your heroes in the old world have an option to be mounted on a chariot. Um, and usually there's something here designed around charging. A lot of times, like some kind of impact hit sort of thing. But in general, um, this is about it. Like, there's not a lot of identity to what chariots are supposed to do in Age of Sigmar. Um, Most of the time, they're not really good in combat. They'll have something they do on the charge, but it doesn't really do that much. They'll be fast, but not super fast because it's, some kind of beast pulling a thing. Although I would argue if you have two beasts pulling a thing, then, that seems like it should still be fast. Um, the, the health factor, I think, is on point. Like, it probably should be about that. And really, I think it makes sense to have a little bit of a trade off with chariots where um, they have a little bit less on health, and it allows them to have some other statistics boosted a little bit. All right. So, what can we do to develop identity of chariots? They're relatively cheap. 100 to 150 points is pretty common. A few a little bit more than that. Um, they're generally fast, so they should be high movement, have some tricks to their movement as well. Um, they really act independently. I think they probably are things that you're not really going to want to be benefiting from too much synergy, which gives them kind of an advantage that they're not going to have that sort of thing pointed in as much. And as I said before, sacrificing durability for some other attributes. And I think really what we can do with these is divide it into 3 subgroups. I mean, at least 3. These are just the 3 that I'm proposing. We could do it, have one that's like combat, one that's kind of a shooting weapons platform kind of deal, and one that's kind of like a scout prospector, something that's just really fast and doesn't really do much else. So, uh, what kind of characteristics are we looking at for these? For your kind of cavalry-like version that's going in to always be charging, you should be getting charge bonuses, definitely for things. A lot of these chariots just have very little that they get bonuses on right now. Definitely some kind of like impact hits, the 2 up D3 mortal damage is, kind of the go-to. Um, and bonuses for power through. Um, if anything's going to be powering through, it's going to be a chariot. Um, and then for a shooting platform, obviously it should have strong shooting. It should still be pretty fast. And I think some kind of like escape abilities would be beneficial as well, so that they can kind of get out of combat to continue shooting. And, they're quick, so they're going to be able to kind of power their way out of bad situations. And then, like a scout roll, they should be really fast. They should be able to evade pretty easily, whether it's escaping from combat or having some kind of other movement tricks, like um, your redeploy is always at least a 4, those sorts of things. All right, so let's look at some specific examples, and I think I'm going to do these kind of backwards, at least from this list, because we saved the best for last, right? We want to always be charging, and you know, YouTube retention's cool. So uh, let's get into it. Let's take a look first at something that's really just going to be designed around being fast. So I think the Slaneshi Seeker Chariot is a good example here. I mean, as it currently stands, it's 100 points. It moves 12. Its uh, weapons profile does like its modal outcome is 0, right? Like this is gonna do maybe 1 damage on a good day, and it has that charge D3 mortal damage on a 2-up. So this does nothing, and I see no reason to pretty much take this ever as it currently stands. So what can we do to make this better? I think the big thing here is that this needs more special abilities to kind of develop an identity for it, because right now it doesn't do anything. Like I can't even say it's trying to have an identity. It's just kind of present. Like this feels like the like baseline uh, that like baseline chariot that you kind of build out something from. Like, oh, this is going to be my starter stats, um, but it doesn't do anything. All right, so um, for this, I think we should give them both run and redeploy that automatically becomes at least a 4 if you get a 1 through 3, and give it a retreat and charge ability without having a mortal damage penalty. So it's really just built around going to be really quick, going to run all around the board, but it's not going to do a lot of damage. And I think that's totally fine for a lot of units. Like if you want something that's just going to run and do battle tactics for you and grab objectives in the backfield or harass things, pin things in, uh, you know, it, this is, if it has all of these movement tricks, it's suddenly something that can do that. And again, just like the hero video that I did recently, kind of fixing combat heroes as well. Like this is probably still not going to see play, even though we just gave that some outrageous speed abilities. It's still not doing damage. So maybe in the current General's Handbook season, this will be a good like prospector unit to get a couple of specific battle tactics. But other than that, I could definitely still see this not seeing play pretty easily. Even though we just tremendously boosted the stats in a way that seems like perfectly reasonable to still be 100 points. Inclusion rate still not going to go up, like not significantly. Scourge Runner Chariot. So this is your mobile weapons platform chariot. Currently, its identity seems to be that it um, wants to be a monster hunter, but it basically does 0 damage, just like our Seeker Chariot. I don't know why they did this. 120 points, it only moves 10 for a chariot. That's not a lot. Get your harpoon gun, which only 2 attacks and D3 damage. I don't care about anything else that it does. Like it's just so little that it's just kind of I don't know what they're thinking. Um, comparing this to like other shooting units, um, like other shooting units at 120 points do stuff. They'll throw around a few damage, and I think that's pretty reasonable, you know. But this is doing nothing, and I don't know why we're doing that. So what I think we should do, bump up their movement by 2, and that gives them a little bit more mobility and just kind of makes them a little bit more distinctive as a chariot being a fast thing. The harpoon gun. I think what we really need to do is generally boost the stats. This is supposed to be a monster hunter. It's a harpoon gun. So you would think a harpoon gun is going to hit real hard. Like if a person gets hit by a harpoon, it's going to go through them and through the guy in back of them. So I'm going to keep the range at 16, which I think is pretty reasonable for this. Harpoon gun's not like a long range weapon, really. 4 attacks, 3s and 2s. I think you can really justify the 2s just on it being a giant crossbow that's, shooting harpoons. With Ren 2, again, like you're going to really pierce stuff with a harpoon gun. And, continuing on with the anti-monster theme, giving it anti-monster +1 damage instead of the +1 rend that it currently has. And we're going to give this crit 2 hits. So I think that's going to boost its power to a place that kind of makes sense. Keep the spear and the horse the same, really. They don't really need to change. Keeping +1 to hit against monsters, and give it like a run, retreat, and shoot ability, and retreat without mortal damage. I feel like chariots in general are supposed to be really mobile, so if they get stuck in combat, that's going to be a problem. Excuse me. So this now, instead of it doing basically 0 on average, it's going to do around 4 damage. And then specifically against monsters, it can hit them for 8 damage on average. Now, this, I think, starts getting a little bit interesting. This is kind of on par now with what other shooting units do, and it's a really mobile shooting unit. Now, like efficiency-wise, it's comparable to other shooting units, but it's only 120 points, so as an individual piece, it's still really not doing a ton. And then versus monsters, I mean, it's something that's going to be valuable sometimes, but if you're getting in near a monster, like 8 damage ain't going to kill it, and then it's going to come kill you really quickly. So I think that is still pretty in bounds for this. I think really kind of continuing on that sub role of being a monster hunter is good, and in general in the current edition, like I think it's an awesome idea that you have these anti-X abilities, like kind of give it a rock paper scissors kind of role, but none of them are strong enough. Most of them are just like +1 red or +1 to hit kind of thing, but I don't think that's nearly enough. And so, basically doubling damage against monsters, I think, is gonna really be on point for this. Ooh, sorry, had to pause to cough for a second and couldn't quite find the pause button. All right, so Chaos Gorby's Chariot. This is clearly one that wants to just charge in and do lots of damage. So 110 points, moves 9, because it's a big hulking beast that's not like a horse. Health 8, save 4. Chaos Great Blade, 3 attacks, 4s, 3s, 1 rend, 2 damage. And then they also have a whip, and then your which does really nothing. It's just present and annoying to have to roll that out. Then the beast, 4 attacks, 4s and 4s, no rend, 2 damage. You get an additional D3 mortal damage when it powers through. Your average damage output for this thing is 2. Um, this thing is just not throwing a lot of damage, and so it, the beast being fours and fours is just ridiculous. I don't know why they thought that was a good thing to do. The thing is huge. It's gigantic. It's muscular. I don't know why they're like, oh, it's going to be on fours and fours. Like, no, no, guys. So for our changes, I bumped the move characteristic up to 10, just because 9 is silly. I like big round numbers, so OCD is a thing. So let's make it 10. Um, our Great Blade, um, I just gave it +1 to hit and put it on 1 damage, but then also charge, giving it +1 rend and +1 damage. So it's a little bit more thematic, a little bit more powerful when it charges, but weaker when it doesn't charge. Um, I got rid of the whip just because it wasn't doing anything, and it's extra rolls for no reason. So Games Workshop, stop freaking doing this. These attacks are annoying. Nobody wants to do these. They don't give you any damage really, like maybe 1. Um, it's just not worth rolling the dice. So let's get rid of it and kind of bake it into the rest of this. Now, the Beast, I bumped him up to 5 attacks, putting him on 3s to hit and 2s to wound. Um, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be that. Keeping the 2 damage, giving him 1 rend. This thing's going to come and beat the bejesus out of you. Uh, the thing is gigantic. I don't know why they thought it would be 4s and 4s, but like if this thing goes up against a human hero, right? Is it going to be like a human hero is 5 attacks, 3s, 3s, rend 1, 2 damage, like standard. Is this thing going toe to toe with a human hero going to be stronger than him? Probably. So going to 2s to wound, I think, makes sense. Then anti-infantry +1 rend. Um, Again, this thing's huge. It's going to pass through a line of infantry and just completely wreck them. So instead of going additional damage, I just did +1 rend, just so it's a little bump, but it's give it a little bit of extra flavor, but it's not going to be crazy. So, additional rules that we're giving it. We're going to keep that additional D3 on power through. Now, for this, I'm going to keep with the kind of anti-infantry theme. So this is going to do more damage against large units than it is on for smaller units. So after you charge, you're going to roll a d6 for each model in the enemy unit, and uh, in any unit in combat range of it. So if you Tokyo drift into a couple of units, you can do this multiple times. And then roll a d6 for each model in the unit, and you do a mortal damage for each 6 that you roll. I think that's pretty reasonable. Like if this charges into a monster, it's going to kind of bounce off, but if it charges into infantry, it's going to mow them down. So taking a look here, our original Chariot's going to average 2 damage on the charge, or ever, and then additional D3 on power through. Here, this is going to average 8 damage, but only when it charges. And this is going to do very much less when it does not charge, because your Great Blade gets cut even more than in half. Your Beast is still going to be about the same, whether it's charging or not, and you just kind of lose that charge bonus and you lose that power through bonus. So it's going to plow in. It's going to mess up infantry really bad. But if this doesn't charge, it's going to have some problems, and it's not going to be that useful. So, guys, that is it. This one was a fun one to do. I kind of like these. I might do a couple more of other unit types that are kind of trash right now. I apologize if this has been a little bit quiet. in a hotel room at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and so I don't want to be uh, too loud for my neighbors if there are any. So that's it for now, guys. Hope you enjoyed. I'll talk to you all later.